Hello, and welcome to another installment of At the Podium with me, Patrick Huey. At the Podium is a platform where we will learn from people who come from different walks of life, careers, and experiences, but all share one thing in common. They have stepped fully into the transformative power of saying yes to the unexpected turns of their lives, and they're now using the power of their voice or podium to make an impact on the world we live in today. At the Podium is the intersection of art, culture, and big thoughts wrapped up in good, old-fashioned conversation. Today, I'm thrilled and humbled to share the podium with Ryland Engelhart. Ryland co-founded Kiss the Ground in 2013 and serves as that organization's executive director. He is also the producer of the Kiss the Ground film and host of the Kiss the Ground podcast. As a 15-year entrepreneur, he is also the co-owner and former mission fulfillment officer of the nationally recognized plant-based restaurants Café Gratitude and Gracias, Madre, located in Southern California. He is also the creator of the documentary film May I Be Frank. When he's not on the road speaking on behalf of sacred commerce and regenerative agriculture, Ryland is also a dedicated husband and father and lives on a 17-acre regenerative farm in Fillmore, California, where he learns to practice what he preaches. Ryland, welcome to At the Podium.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Really, it's a joy to be here with you. I'm recalling the first moment that we connected, and we were standing next to each other in the back of a church at one of your locations in South Carolina?
It was the Deepak Chopra wellness event that we did in South Carolina down in Palmetto Bluff. We did the whole hand energy thing.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. And then you looked down, you acknowledged my shoes. You had liked my regenerative leather shoes from Timberland that you were admiring. And I just remember your enthusiasm, joy, brightness, kindness in your spirit. And I was just like, I like this guy a lot. I felt the warmth of your heart and your being. Yeah. So glad that we've been able to stay in touch and that we could have this conversation. Thank you.
I was really fascinated by your film, Kiss the Ground. And it was really one of those life-changing moments when it comes to a topic that people really are talking about right now, which is how do we care for our planet? How do we feed ourselves properly? And how do we deal with global warming? But I wanted to go back a little before that because I was interested in the derivation of the name Kiss the Ground. And then I found the quote from Rumi, which states, "Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground." Why was that quote so important to you?
Well, I'll just start by saying my son, his name is Rumi. Yeah, Rumi really has been the voice and the words, that have been some of the great inspirations for me and my family just around the endeavors, the things that we've taken on. His ability to communicate sort of this relationship between divinity, materiality, or humanity, and just sort of the invitation to be called from sort of that indwelling presence within our hearts. His words, they sort of avoid the intellect and speak right to the heart. There's a quote that says, "Start some big foolish project like Noah." And Café Gratitude, that's my dad's favorite line, is that Café Gratitude was our big foolish project. And then I oftentimes say, Kiss the Ground was my big foolish project. And, when we were learning about regenerative agriculture and learning about how soil and plants could be a solution to climate change and our human health, we were discussing names for what this organization, what this education advocacy nonprofit could be named that would really encompass. And, I'm definitely more, between like the analytical or sort of like straight to the point or more poetic. I'm a little bit more on the poetic, a little bit flying free side of things. And so we were actually going to be calling the organization Soilutions. And Rumi just whispered in my ear this notion of kiss the ground. And it was just like, oh my God, that is so, you know, and again, when I thought it and heard it and saw it, it's like, the what's the bigger thing that we need to be doing is we need to have love in our hearts,
Mm.
and we need to have that love pointed to the world that we're living in. And right now there's almost more love towards, the metaverse or getting to Mars. And what we need is we need love for this creation, for our existence, for our mother, for the thing that gives us sustenance. And Kiss the Ground just emerged like this perfect poetic hug of a communication that's poetic, that's literal, that's direct. From a spiritual perspective, which I know you don't mind going because I met you at a Deepak Chopra event. One thing is for sure is that human beings, we have ego, and that ego oftentimes will express as arrogance, pompousness, and a greater sense of self that ultimately takes us away from being caring and being kind and being connected to those things and people around us. And kissing the ground is an expression and even a feeling, and actually something that I've experienced, of the greatest moments of surrender, gratitude, humility, and appreciation are moments of kissing the ground, whether it was a moment of, being brought to my knees by a loss, sitting in a plant medicine, ceremony where, realizing how disconnected I am, and then feeling connected again and being, in tears on my knees, just like being so thankful that I have the ability to have the awareness that I'm alive and that I actually can make a new choice. So Kiss the Ground, it holds so many things. And then even in the quote, let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground, which I think, there's so many ways that we can live an expression of love. We can live an expression of praise. We can live an expression of gratitude. We can live an expression of generosity, service. And so all those things wrapped up into 3 words. I kind of envision that in the future, Kiss the Ground becomes synonymous with a humanity that's more connected and more loving towards the living world.
People ask, when is this going to end? When is this pandemic? When is this division going to end? And I hearken back to the idea within the Rumi quote about surrender, which you alluded to. And I keep saying, this will not end until we learn the lesson.
Mm.
And the lesson is surrender. The lesson is, I am my brother's keeper. The lesson is love. And I think what's so moving about what you just said is that within the very act of kissing the ground is an act of humility, an act of surrender. And I think it's so important right now because we live in a time that is not about that. It's about being right. It's about my opinion matters more than anything else. What I found powerful about the movie Kiss the Ground was that we owe Mother Earth the gratitude, the respect, and the surrender that she deserves, because she literally feeds us. And the soil that God has put on the planet literally sustains the life that we have on the planet. And I thought that was really the message of that movie, besides the great work of the characters in that movie who are really trying to save the world, literally, by bringing carbon dioxide back into the ground. So I was really touched by that in your movie and what you just said.
Yeah, my hope and prayer is that the film rekindles the love story between human beings and Mother Earth. And human beings can be a beneficial species to planet Earth. There's such a beautiful narrative that is possible for human beings to remember and relive, which is we can have life on earth be more abundant based on our interaction and our participation, versus that we fundamentally are extractors, that we fundamentally are degenerators, that we fundamentally are locuses on our own planet, that we can be probiotics proliferating good biology, biome, and creating this trophic cascade of regeneration based on our interaction and the way that we interact and manage the landscape.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think in the movie, I was really fascinated by Ray Archuleta, because I think he's carrying that message that you just articulated to farmers. And as I was watching the movie, I was saying to myself, how is he going to convince these people who have, in many cases, worked these farms for generations in a very specific way in terms of tilling the ground? How do you reconnect the synapses in their brain to understand that that's actually not the right way to do it for sustaining the earth and sustaining the food source for the earth? How does one do that?
There's hundreds and thousands of ways to do that. Just like there's hundreds of ways to kiss the ground. So I'll speak to just Ray, because I know Ray quite well, and he definitely has many things he said have stuck in my mind as quotables. One thing he says is that all he does is planting seeds. He's just planting seeds, and basically the mind that's listening has to be the right fertility to have that seed germinate, sprout, and grow. So he oftentimes says farmers are not going to change until they're ready to change. And that's whether they've hit a wall, their tools in their toolbox aren't working, or at least they see the trend of their system of agriculture and what's happening on their farm, and the amount of loans and the amount of land and the amount of equipment and the amount of increase in herbicide, fungicide, the price of commodity crops that they're growing are going down. When someone sees that they don't have a future doing what they're doing, then they have to turn, they have to change. I think we're all face to face with what does it really take to change, because it's hard. We could just get really honest with ourselves. Like, it's really hard. I oftentimes talk about this. Like, I went to a Chinese herbalist acupuncturist and he told me, chew your food 50 times. I tried for 3 years to chew my food 50 times is, that's just like that's one little thing, let alone changing one's whole business and one's whole thinking. The complexity of change, especially when it comes to changing a farming system and a supply chain, it's difficult. I'd say that Ray would say, one, that there has to be the willingness and the readiness for change. Obviously, having the right voice, the right messenger, the right educator to then provide those seeds to those listening and ready minds. That's why we, as an advocacy group that speaks mostly to kind of consumers or educators or activists, I don't have the voice, the credibility to tell a farmer what to do in a different way than they're doing it. But where I have found my skills are being able to create stories and create messages that are able to reach large audiences that ultimately move trends and behaviors to start going in this direction. I had a transformational awakening moment, almost 10 years ago, where I learned about soil in New Zealand. And the insight that I had was like, oh my God, I can see the world waking up to this message. The only way that I thought that I could somehow have something to do with that was I lived in Los Angeles, the media capital of the world, and I knew lots of filmmakers and people who are content creators. So we just, all right, we'll create a education and advocacy nonprofit that tells stories about this possibility, because this story blew my mind, and how can I give that mind blow experience that I had, make that available in a broad way. And obviously to have a film on Netflix that's been seen over 5 million times and in 40 countries and won over 50 film festivals and almost a billion media impressions. That's that dream coming true. I just want to shout out and give proper credit where credit is due, and just acknowledge Rebecca and Josh Takal, who are the directors of the Kiss the Ground film. My official, I was one of the producers on the film, and obviously my nonprofit, the name Kiss the Ground, came from what I was doing prior to the film having any existence. I just want to acknowledge and thank them for ultimately crafting a story that was on my heart and mind and wanted to get out to the world in a big way.
It seems that this curiosity began when you were very young. Your parents were very much shaping your relationship to food from a very young age. And in your life, they married the idea of food and gratitude, which plays out even in the movie and the work that you're doing. How did they influence and shape what you're doing today?
Yeah, we come from the mother and we try to learn from the father, or we try to impress the father. We come from the mother and we try to, we get loved by the mother, we try to impress the father. So, my parents were pretty far out, spiritual, pretty eccentric in their own beautiful way, spiritual seekers, really gave me a framework for spirituality, and that we're all one. This universe is a totality experience that's experiencing itself, and how can we be a cell in the body in service to the rest of the whole? If I wasn't raised with a spiritual doctrine or a God that was even like human or male, but that the universe, the creator, was an intelligence, a consciousness that was integrated and omnipresent in everything. The way to know and be connected to that God was to embody and be love. Prior to Ram Dass's book, Be Love, now coming out, me and my dad went and got Be Love tattoos when I was about 24 years old.
Yeah.
So about 16 years ago, and that was really a culmination of sort of coming into manhood and looking at what was the sort of masculine archetype that I wanted to bring into the world. How did I want to represent masculinity? Sort of what came through to me was like this presence of like, wherever I go, love is. Show up as a presence of love. That was just kind of my own interpretation, remembrance, assimilation, integration of, what was going to be my practice. It was like, okay, I'm going to be a presence of love wherever I go, and whatever I do. That was expressed through, the tenets of Café Gratitude. My parents now live on a farm called Be Love Farm in Northern California, which, by the way, you, Patrick, as someone who's, loves hospitality and unique hospitality experiences, it would blow your mind. So yeah, so really there's been a spiritual infusion of love and gratitude. To even put a finer point on it, my parents had this philosophy that our life, and again, this comes from not from them, but many spiritual traditions speak to this, but that our life is a picture of our mind, and that spirit, God, creator, is going to illuminate whatever we put our attention on. So our thoughts, speech, beliefs, actions, and attitudes, whatever we're putting our attention on will become the manifest reality of our lives. So if we're having grateful thoughts all day long, we're going to continue to catalyze the awareness of more things to be grateful for. Thought, speech, beliefs, actions, and attitudes. And they had created a business prior to Café Gratitude called Flax, that was a clothing manufacturing business that was big in the 90s. Women's linen clothing, almost like pre-Eileen Fisher kind of women's loose-fitting natural fiber. And it was called Engelhart Designs, and it also had kind of the whole affirmation thing of, which is, integrated into Café Gratitude, which we haven't gotten into, but, in every piece of clothing, there was a tag different than the washing instructions, which would say, I am letting go of wants I no longer need. I am love listening to that thought. Now it's pretty mainstream. Like it's the whole idea of Café Gratitude, and people having menu positive affirmations. Oh, this is the Buddha bowl, or or this is the gratitude, the bliss bowl. Now it's become quite ubiquitous. It's become, quite expanded throughout, more pop culture. 30, 40 years ago, it wasn't. So I definitely had the unique opportunity of seeing my parents birth some pretty innovative, without the education, without the resources, and really, I'd say that that's really what my family has taught me, and what has exemplified is, like, if you are really holding a vision of something, you can draw the resources, you can draw the community, the people, the partners, the team to make it happen. We definitely are not specialists in anything. We've been more catalysts for really unique things by bringing the skill together to actually make something happen.
You just said that the world takes something like a positive affirmation and understands it better now. It's more mainstream, it's more accepted, it's not as perhaps revolutionary as it was 30 years ago. But you guys did face criticism in Café Gratitude when you were naming your dishes with the positive affirmations.
Oh my God, we had so much cynicism about
Where
it.
did that come from? Because that's one of the really beautiful things about the restaurant, is that, again, it makes you think differently about what you're putting in your body based upon the affirmation. So how did you get, so I'm not sure if the world is really ready for that. I think we like to think they are, but people really push back on those dish titles.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a whole generation, and there's definitely, I would say, a much broader acceptance of brands having much more than just a product, but actually selling an attitude and a way of being. But again, for sure, Café Gratitude, we were very, very, I mean, at first we were a vegan raw food restaurant, all organic ingredients, mostly nothing cooked. So that's already a major, I mean, just vegetarian is a total no-no for 95% of people. Then vegan, you've lost another 3%. And then raw, you've lost another 2%. And then you make those wacky raw fooders, then you're going to tell them, you got to say, I am grateful to order this dish, or I am beautiful to order this dish. And so, yeah, that is, we definitely received a lot of pushback. But again, I think Café Gratitude would have never worked if it wasn't coming from a deep sincerity. I mean, I'll just say that I was the most drank of the Kool-Aid as far as they go. I mean, I was the biggest evangelist for the organization. That was primarily my role. I was the evangelist of the organization, in the Bay Area, and then we moved to LA 10 years ago. But literally, if you ask me why I was moving to LA, I was moving to LA to change the world through transformation, through food and gratitude, and that we were on a mission to, there was like the idea of like prioritization of like, no, we need to go down here, we're going to open like X amount of restaurants, and they need to be doing, X amount of profitability. Like as far as like prioritization, I was on a mission to create a new culture around food, around health, and around gratitude. And that was like, I came to LA and with this dream of that we were going to be able to come to the belly of the beast, this sort of superficial, materialistic world, and we could bring something truly wholesome, truly heart-centered, truly in service of our fellow, man and woman, fellow human. And that was truly why we came. I mean, literally, I gathered 14 of our employees who were my best friends, and we literally organized a caravan and moved down here and lived in 3 different houses in Koreatown, and lived as community in this experimental, like, all right, we're gonna live in community, and we're gonna practice the values of gratitude and thanksgiving and prayer and song. We're going to play music, and we're going to create art, and we're going to open these restaurants, and we're going to bring the community of Los Angeles into this experience that we're living authentically. And we can see how that translates and communicates into the culture of Los Angeles. I mean, it literally was driven, much, not like a little bit like, yeah, we're a mission driven organization, we have a mission statement on the wall. We were on a mission. It was like we were, and again, that's the same thing with Kiss the Ground. Like, we did not have a playbook of how we were going to create an adoption of regenerative agriculture as the, as a primary solution for human health degradation and planetary health degradation, and a solution for climate change. It was like, all right, we're on it. We're going to just explore and use the creative kind of Gatling gun of what we're going to try to do, and we'll see what works and what happens. But it was simply from, a deep rooted vision and passion to fulfill that vision.
And Los Angeles responded.
They certainly did. It was, I mean, it was absurd.
Your Kool-Aid.
We thought we opened Café Gratitude in the Bay Area. We were doing like $3,000 in sales a day. We opened in Café Gratitude in our Larchmont location. It was like you couldn't get in to a vegan raw food restaurant that made you say funny things like, I am abundant, to get a plate of raw crackers, and you couldn't get in. We were turning Russell Brand away at the door, and he was getting annoyed by it. It was wild. We were kind of naive. We came to LA a little bit naive to. I mean, we had hopes and dreams, but it literally grew much quicker and faster, and became adopted in such a bigger way and in a quicker way. And again, just to give credit where credit is due, in the partnership, which had Café Gratitude kind of go from 1.0 to 2.0 when we came from the Bay Area in 2010 to LA, we had partnered with Chris and Lisa Bonbright, 2 amazing human beings, husband, wife. Chris is a really successful commercial real estate broker in Los Angeles, and they started off just wanting to eat at our restaurants and saying, oh, maybe I can get a deal by finding them a location, to us being like, go away. We're not ready to come to LA, to where they finally said, all right, we'll partner with you. We'll do the real estate and sort of business acumen and sort of business logistics, and you guys do food and culture. And basically me and my brother came down. My parents stayed in the Bay Area. They were living on a farm at this point. And so we kind of were the next generation coming forth. And that was just over 11 years ago.
You did an interview with a website, a magazine called Live Kindly, a few years ago. And this was right when you and your wife were expecting. And at that time, you said that you were grateful that you would soon experience the mystery of fatherhood. Do you remember this article that you did?
Yeah.
You said you were going to be experiencing the mystery of fatherhood, and now your roomie is here. I'm curious, have you been able to unlock some of the mysteries of fatherhood? And what did you learn about yourself from being a father?
Great question. Yeah, so fatherhood for sure has been by far one of the great joys of life. One of the best ways to articulate it is that the capacity of love that I had known up until that point was like living in the garage, and then you open this secret door into like a big dining room or kitchen, and you're like, oh my God, there's just this whole other capacity of space for love to experience. And it really has been unbelievable, rewarding, and rich, and challenging. Challenging. It's definitely not. It is not easy, and it's not for the faint of the heart. Wow, it's actually, to go kind of total contrast quick, because it is the most extraordinary, expansive love experience. And as someone who've considered themselves very chill and like really mellow, and like almost nothing can get under my skin, and like I pride myself on not getting razzled or not getting kind of triggered. My God, can yeah, being a father and having a child, have my, Rumi being in upset for no reason, that there's no, for whatever reason, I didn't think, I just, you don't think about that, but like, there's nothing wrong. They're not hungry. There's not a, they're not in danger. They don't have, they don't have poop in their diaper. They don't like, their teeth aren't coming in, but it's just a little thing is not how they like it. Like the banana has a peel on it that is and it's a breakdown. And like the balance of how to hold, like, I have to draw a very firm, loving line that it's not okay to cry about something that doesn't make any sense. But then also then noticing like, wow, you're really angry and you're getting, you're getting frustrated. I'm getting frustrated and angry at something so small. And then being able to, really observe like, wow, that is, I'm surprised how, I mean, as far as like what I've been surprised on how triggered I get by things that I see as inconsequential or not a problem, being a problem for a 3-year-old, and them then, creating a lot of emotional upset and tears and tantrum, and sort of the powerlessness of, it seems like you can't just let it be, but you can't condone it by just giving in everything that they want, but then also yelling. And I've made the commitment of not hitting, so it's like I mean it's a tricky thing. I have never been more in high praise and acknowledgement to mothers, also high praise and acknowledgement to single mothers, high praise and acknowledgement to people with limited resources and mothering. I mean, it's just like the layer of to not have things, and then to be dealing with I mean, it's just like saints. I mean, there is so many saints that go unnoticed that are just for raising their kids and dealing with the shenanigans that kids put their parents through before they're even recognizing they're putting their parents through it, is like, wow, it's remarkable.
So what do you do?
I vacillate, between parenting, between me and my wife and my wife Sarah. That's the great thing about the great thing and the challenging about co-parenting is, or in anything, like when one person loses it, the other person can pick up the ball, or throw you a rescue rope of like, let me pull you back into sanity because you've lost the plot. And when I lose it, my wife oftentimes reminds me, Ryland, is that helpful? Is that gonna, is that giving him a pathway to resolution, or is that just you expressing your anger? Because if that's just you expressing your anger, is that actually getting us anywhere? I feel really grateful for the communication tools of of my parents, of my lifetime, of the training within Café Gratitude. Not taking things personally. Obviously, that's a really good lesson. So what do I do is I oftentimes will try to start by just gently directing attention to something else, something that, to something that might bring a shift in attention. If that doesn't work, then you give the two. Here are the two options. These are your two options. You can do this or that. And then you go into the bribery. If you continue to do that, you lose. No sugary thing, no iPad.
Yes.
And you think, I'm never going to be a bribing parent. I'm never going to. That's hilarious. You think, I'll never bribe my kids with candy. Oh, yes, you will.
Oh, yes, you will.
Uh,
I I have one last question for you, and
yeah.
I ask people who so graciously join this podcast, and thank you so much for today, Ryland. I want to know, because you've had such a great life and so many wonderful things you have given to the world and received from the world. I wonder, what was something in your life that was unexpected that showed up that you weren't prepared for? And how did you embrace that for yourself?
Yeah. Post the success of the film, there became some criticism about the film in its lack of diversity, and that it didn't hold or it didn't connect to that regenerative land management. A lot of its philosophical tenets can be connected and drawn back to many indigenous cultures and
Mm,
ways of living in relationship to land. This was again in the pandemic, post George Floyd being murdered, um, everything kind of being turned inside out, everybody looking at, where is systemic racism in every organization, top to bottom. And, there definitely became some criticism at Kiss the Ground and at me personally. And I I just totally, I got so disenchanted, and that I totally started mistrusting myself, and kind of became very apathetic and despondent to life, and really, like, my health, I ended up having two surgeries because my health just the stress and overwhelm, um it just spiraled into, yeah, an a sort of a total meltdown in my identity, my who I thought I was, who I saw myself in the world. Really, I would say that I'm still piecing myself back together from that. And the humble truth is, we build ourselves up and a persona and a personality attached to things that we've done, and then, the moment those things are gone, and we don't have a vision for, what's calling us forth. In my case, I just, spiraled into a um depression, and a kind of just a real loss for grabbing at everything I could to kind of find solid ground, and kind of not finding it, and wanting to be able to, hang it on some material, you know, thing that I could kind of, I just did this, now I feel good. this past year, a lot of that kind of just, yeah, there's just a lot of vaporizing of those things. And I've been really just in a process of surrender, as we spoke to earlier, and letting go of my attachments and asking for help in the physical world and in my, in my internal world. um and and being patient, that just because we had confidence and we knew where we were going and what we were doing for 20 years of life, there can be a moment when we don't have that clarity. The best feedback and advice that someone gave me is like that life and reality is in chapters and seasons. And there's the winter season, which is hibernation and inward, and there doesn't need to be a new idea and a big project and a 12-point plan to fulfill the big thing. So yeah, there's definitely been a lot of humbly walking through it, being transparent or authentic about all that I don't know, and asking for guidance, as I said, and asking for the community, the people that my team, the people around me, for support, and surrendering to that there is a divine timing for the inhale, the exhale, that that springtime hasn't come yet, and so nothing's growing yet, and that's okay. They're definitely, as we live in this world of perpetual produce. There's a lot of pressure to that, and for me, I've had to die and let go of the need for that, and really just surrender into, this is what is now, and this too shall pass, as all seasons change, and being open to receiving the next instruction.
There will be spring.
Definitely.
Ryland, thank you so much for your time today and your willingness to share your voice and your wisdom with us. I am beyond grateful to you. I really am. I appreciate the time.
You're really welcome. And thank you, Patrick. It's a joy to know you. And thank you for your smile. Thank you for your aliveness in your spirit. And thank you for wanting to share transformational ideas and voices and stories with the world. And appreciate it.
Thank you. To those of you who are watching and listening, remember, we all have a voice. Use yours wisely.